one of the questions here is around leaving a house to your children. Let's say, Anthony, for example, that I've got a house in Mollymook, and sadly one day I'm going to pass away, as probably all of us do. Well, not quite so sadly for Simon, honestly, but and let's say that I want to obviously pass that house to the kids when my wife and I are gone. They have their own home, so they're likely to end up renting it out, okay? And they're worried about taxes that they may have to pay when they inherit the property because they'll be keeping it as an investment, so they won't be moving in to live there. And you know, they don't have a lot of spare cash because they're paying off their own mortgages at the moment. Is there anything we can do to help them when they actually inherit the house?
It's an interesting situation that Matt's described. I guess the starting point is if you're dealing with a principal place of residence when it passes to your beneficiaries after you've gone, there is a 2-year exemption for capital gains tax and land tax that apply. So if the property is sold within 2 years after the date of death, then there's no capital gain tax or land tax payable. Now that's what I see most often, but certainly there is a way of being able to pass the property on to your children and minimise the amount of tax they've got to pay if they're going to hold it as an investment property. Because as an investment property, the same way as anyone owning an investment property, if it's not held in a particular way, then you'll be paying income tax on all the income that's produced from the property, and unless it's your principal place of residence, and that's going to be a problem you can't get around. But there is a kind of will called a discretionary testamentary trust will. It is a more complex document in its content, but at its core, it's a very simple document. It basically, if you had husband, wife, and kids and grandkids, and you wanted to benefit your children and then your grandchildren, a testamentary trust will do exactly that. The only difference with it is that it effectively creates a trust like a family trust within the will, and in a discretionary trust will, you can hold assets or income earning assets within that trust, and there's actually very significant tax benefits that can be gained from your beneficiaries. So in the case of Matt's Mollymook Beach principal place of residence that's potentially going to the kids, the property can basically be left in the trust. The trust would be controlled by the children, and the advantage they have is if they've got an asset that's held within the trust, any of the income that they earn from that property, whether that's through renting or other means, they can actually stream that income to any minor children that they have, and that's really an accounting exercise. But it effectively means, and with a discretionary testamentary trust in a will, you're actually each minor child is able to receive up to the adult tax-free threshold. So if there's 4 children, for instance, or 4 grandchildren, and 2 children who are owning the properties as the trustees, they could effectively have $40,000 of the income generated by that property tax-free. So whilst it's a really valuable thing to think about, because most properties are, particularly down here, now we're looking, if it's anywhere near Mollymook Beach or any of the beaches, we're getting up towards the $600,000, $700,000, $800,000. The tax impact of holding it or holding it without a trust can be significant if you're going to generate income. So testamentary trust wills often people are very tentative about them or are scared of them because they're a larger document and they are more complex because they set up the structures in your will. But my view on them is that it's my job to explain the document to you, and that's part of what I do. And as I say, at their very core, they do exactly the same thing that a very simple will does. It's just that they provide your beneficiaries with a bit more options. And that's the other thing about them. If the executors and the beneficiaries only make the decision as to whether to utilise that trust when the passing away happens, because it'll depend on what their financial circumstances are at the time, what the value of the assets are, and if they don't want to use it, they don't have to, but you can't put them in retrospectively. So they're a really good tool to be able to minimise tax, and that's something that we all would like to do, I'm sure.
Excuse me, does that mean all the assets? That's cash and shares and houses?
Yes, you can hold any asset within a discretionary trust. You can effectively say the whole of your estate goes into the trust. And so if there are income earning assets, then absolutely they can be held in a discretionary trust.
Would you need that if the children are going to live in the house?
No, you don't, because your principal place of residence, you're not getting taxed in the same way. It's really about if you want to hold any income generating assets.
Do you have to have this trust established before you die, like already going, so that you can put the assets in it?
Well, there's a different. It is created when you prepare your will, so it's actually within the form of the will. It's different to a family trust that you might be thinking about. A family trust is something you generally set up during your lifetime, and a lot of people use it for tax minimisation purposes, if you have businesses, that sort of thing. But the trust structure itself is created within the will. Now, in the same way as any other trust structure may need updating over the years as the laws change, the trust created within your will allows for those changes over time, but it actually only comes into existence when you've passed away. As I said earlier, the main issue with a discretionary trust is you can't put it in place after the fact. So if it's not in the terms of your will or provided for in the terms of your will, you can't create it retrospectively. So it's why it's important to talk about these things now.
Very good. Ben?
We've seen occasionally too where people want to set up these testamentary trusts, not just for tax reasons, but also for asset protection.
Yep.
One of the beneficiaries might have a gambling, drinking, drug problem, or their spouse might, and so this can help in those circumstances too.
Yeah, so the way you do that within a trust is all about control. So you can have beneficiaries, and your beneficiaries can be the wayward child or the child who's having problems. But if you make them a beneficiary of the trust, but leave the control of the trust in someone else's hands, then you minimise that risk of the wastage, or and you're able to engage those protective aspects of it.